Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. This time, we're taking a close look at, well, hematologic set points. Like how our bodies keep those blood cell counts stable.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't really think about until, well, until it's not working right.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting research articles and medical studies here all about set points.
Oh, yeah, I think there are going to be some real eye-openers in here for sure.
Okay, so maybe let's start with the basics. We're talking about the stuff on a regular blood test, right? Like red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets.
That's right, all those components that get measured in a complete blood count, or CBC. The thing is, everybody has a different normal range for those counts, and that's what the set point is.
So it's not just about falling within the normal range on the lab report. It's about what's normal for you, personally.
Absolutely. We've got a study here that followed healthy folks for decades, and you know what? Their individual set points barely changed over all that time.
Decades. Seriously, that's wild. But okay, what about when you get sick? Or like super stressed? Doesn't that throw everything off?
Of course, things like illness or stress can cause those numbers to jump around for a bit. But the amazing thing is, our bodies are usually able to get back to that personalized set point once things calm down.
Huh. So it's like really powerful, this internal system. It makes me think about people who always have low iron or they're always tired. Could that be because their set points are kind of messed up?
That's a great question, and researchers are looking into that right now. See, these set points aren't just random. They're influenced by all sorts of things: genetics, the environment, even your overall health.
Okay, so it's complicated, lots of different factors all playing a role.
Exactly. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
And one of the studies we have here dives into the genetic side of things. They looked at data from thousands of people to see if certain genes were linked to specific blood cell set points.
Did they find anything? I mean, it seems like some people just predisposed to certain blood conditions, right?
Oh, absolutely, they found stuff. It turns out certain genetic variations are definitely associated with specific blood cell counts. For example, they found this one variation that was strongly linked to having lower red blood cell set points. That could explain why some folks are more likely to get anemia.
Wow, so our genes are literally setting the thermostat for our blood cells. That's kind of crazy.
I know, right? And that leads us to something really exciting: the potential for personalized medicine. If we can figure out how these set points work and what influences them, well, then we could create much more targeted treatments for all sorts of blood conditions.
That's amazing. But before we get too far into the treatment side of things, can we go back to the CBC for a sec? You called it a snapshot of our blood. But what exactly are we seeing in that picture?
Good question. A CBC measures several different things. You've got hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen around in your blood; hematocrit, which is the percentage of red blood cells; and then the red blood cells themselves, of course. Then there are white blood cells, which are part of your immune system, and platelets, which help your blood clot.
So it really is a pretty detailed picture of what's happening in your blood at that moment.
It is, but it's just a starting point. Those numbers are important, but interpreting them in light of individual set points is what gives you the real insights.
That makes sense. It's like having a map, but you need a compass to figure out where you actually are.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of deep phenotypes comes in. Those set points aren't just surface level measurements. They show you something much deeper about how someone's body works.
Okay, so we have these personalized set points, and we can see them through a CBC. But how do scientists actually study all this? How do we get from those numbers on a page to actually understanding how blood cells are made and destroyed?
That's where things get really cool, and that's where math comes in. Researchers actually use mathematical models to try and capture the complexity of how blood cells work.
Math. Everybody get ready for a brain workout. I'm just kidding, but seriously, how does math help us understand blood?
Well, picture trying to describe a system where cells are being born, dying, and maturing all at the same time, and they're all influencing each other. It's incredibly complex. And that's where equations like the Mackey-Glass and Lasota equations come in.
Mackey-Glass and Lasota. Those names sound pretty intense. Can you break it down for us regular folks?
Well, think of them as formulas that try to describe the relationships between the things that control blood cells. These equations include things like production rates, how fast cells die, and even time delays in the system.
Time delays. What does that mean?
Well, it takes time for new blood cells to grow up and do their job, right? Those delays are really important because they create a feedback loop. Like if your body isn't making enough of a certain cell, it senses that and starts making more. But if there's a long delay in that loop, it can lead to too many cells or even those numbers bouncing up and down.
It's like a balancing act. And even a small delay can throw everything off.
Exactly. And that's what makes these mathematical models so useful. Scientists can use them to simulate different situations, change different factors, and see what happens to the whole system.
So they're basically running experiments on a computer to see what might happen in real life.
Exactly. And by studying these models, we can learn a lot about how those time delays and other things play a role in keeping those hematologic set points stable.
This is so cool. Okay, so we've talked about individual set points, the role of genetics, and how math can actually help us understand blood cell regulation. What's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, now we can talk about individualized treatment, or like precision medicine. Imagine a future where treatments are designed just for you. based on your own hematologic set point.
Wait, are we talking like sci-fi here? We could actually personalize treatments based on these set points.
It might sound futuristic, but it's where things are headed in healthcare. Instead of like a one-size-fits-all approach, we can use these set points to make way more effective therapies. It'd be like having a treatment that's custom made.
Okay, but how would that even work? Would we like actually change someone's set point? Or is it more about using it to predict how they'll react to certain drugs?
Both of those are real possibilities. Like, for conditions where blood cell counts are way too high or too low, researchers are trying to figure out how to safely adjust those set points.
So instead of just managing the symptoms, we'd be trying to change the way the body works at a really basic level.
Right. Take anemia, for example, or certain types of leukemia. If we really understand how those set points are controlled, we might be able to create treatments that target those mechanisms directly.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. But even if we can't change the set points themselves, just knowing someone's individual baseline could be incredibly useful, right?
Absolutely. Think about it right now. Doctors make treatment decisions based on, like, the average person. But what if your set point for, let's say, red blood cells is naturally lower than average? A treatment that works great for most people might not be the best for you specifically.
So instead of focusing on normal versus abnormal, we'd be looking at what's normal for that individual person.
Exactly. And that's where research on something called relative contrasts comes in. It helps us compare how well different treatments might work, depending on where your set point starts.
Relative contrast. Okay, I'm going to need you to explain that one. How does it work?
Okay, imagine you're choosing between two different medications. Relative contrasts help you see which one would make a bigger difference to your specific blood cell counts based on your starting point. It's not just about how much those numbers change, but about the relative impact for you.
So it's like saying a 5% increase in red blood cells might be huge for someone who starts with a really low count. But for someone who's already in the healthy range, it wouldn't be as big a deal.
You got it. And these relative contrasts can be used to create like really sophisticated algorithms to help doctors make the best choices for each patient.
So we'd be taking all this information, the set points, the relative contrast, the patient's history, and using it to build a truly personalized treatment plan.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what all this research is leading to, a future of precision medicine, where treatments are designed for the individual, not just the disease.
It's wild to think that something as basic as our blood can tell us so much about who we are and how our bodies might react to different treatments.
It really is incredible. And as we learn more about hematologic set points, we're going to unlock some amazing possibilities for making healthcare better and improving people's lives.
Okay, so we know that these set points are super important. They're influenced by our genes and lifestyle, and they could totally revolutionize how we treat diseases.
Yeah.
But is there anything we can do, like on our own, to influence those set points? Or are we basically stuck with what we're born with?
That's a great question, and researchers are definitely trying to figure that out. Our genes definitely play a role in setting our initial set point, but lifestyle choices can have an impact too.
So it's not all about our genes. We can actually do things to nudge those set points in a healthier direction.
That's right. Remember, your body is always trying to stay in balance. So if you keep doing things that are unhealthy, it's going to have a much harder time keeping those set points where they need to be.
Okay, that makes sense. So what kinds of things are we talking about? Give us the good stuff. What can we do to make a difference?
Well, the big things are what you eat, how much sleep you get, how you handle stress, and how much you exercise. You know, they sound like general health tips, but they're especially important when it comes to keeping your blood healthy and maintaining those optimal set points.
All right, let's break those down one by one. Let's start with nutrition. What should we be eating to help our blood cells?
When it comes to healthy blood, there are certain nutrients you really need. Iron, of course, because it's essential for making hemoglobin, which carries oxygen in your blood. Good sources of iron are things like lean meats, beans, lentils, and fortified cereals.
So if you're always tired or feeling like you might have anemia, it's probably a good idea to get your iron levels checked and make sure you're eating enough iron-rich foods.
Absolutely. Another important nutrient is vitamin B12, which helps your body make red blood cells and DNA. B12 is mostly found in animal products, meat, poultry, fish, and dairy.
So if someone's a vegetarian or vegan, they might need to take supplements or eat fortified foods to make sure they're getting enough B12.
Exactly. And don't forget about folate, another B vitamin that's important for making red blood cells. You can find folate in leafy green vegetables, citrus fruits, and some fortified grains.
So a balanced diet with plenty of fruits, vegetables, and lean protein is a good foundation for healthy blood cells.
For sure. But it's not just about what you eat, it's also about what you don't eat. Too much processed food, sugary drinks, and unhealthy fats can cause inflammation and oxidative stress, which can mess with how your blood cells work.
So those bad food choices can actually make it harder for our bodies to maintain that balance we've been talking about.
Right, and that brings us to another big one, sleep.
Sleep, the cure for everything. But seriously, how does sleep affect our blood cells?
When you sleep, your body goes into repair and regeneration mode, and that's when a lot of important processes happen, like making new blood cells.
So if we're not getting enough sleep, we're basically robbing our bodies of that crucial recovery time.
Exactly. If you're not sleeping enough, Over a long period of time, it can mess up those natural rhythms and throw off your blood cell counts.
So maybe those